Vincent Cruz was down to his last 2 meal tokens when exhaustion finally caught up with him. The orbital habitat known as Celestial Gate stretched for kilometers in every direction, a massive ring-shaped structure housing over 3 million souls from 100 different species. Vincent worked in the lower maintenance corridors, the ones that kept the water recirculation functioning while the people above never gave a thought to where their clean water came from. 18 hours. That was how long his shift had been. Some idiot had reversed the polarity on a filtration array in Sector 9, and Vincent had spent most of a day in cramped service ducts fixing the damage. His vision swam with fatigue, his hands ached, and his stomach felt like it had forgotten what food was. The residential cafeteria was supposed to be divided by occupation and clearance level. Engineers and administrators ate in the forward sections. Traders and merchants occupied the middle zones. Workers like Vincent were relegated to the aft compartments where the food was cheaper and the portions smaller. But exhaustion makes people careless. Vincent walked into the first open door he saw, shuffled to what appeared to be an empty booth, and collapsed onto the bench. He was already unwrapping his ration pack when he realized the booth was not actually empty. Across from him sat a figure in a suspended mobility cradle. She was Drexian, one of the crystalline species from the outer colonies. Her body was locked in perfect stillness, faceted skin refracting the ambient light into rainbow patterns. Only her eyes moved, tracking Vincent with an intensity that made him freeze mid-bite. "Oh, damn," Vincent muttered, his tired brain slowly processing what he was seeing. The robes she wore were deep violet with golden threading. That meant aristocracy. Possibly high aristocracy. And the device wrapped around her head, a complex lattice of neural conductors and synaptic bridges, marked her as someone important enough to afford medical technology that cost more than Vincent would earn in 10 lifetimes. "I'm in the wrong section," Vincent said, starting to gather his things. "My apologies. I'll relocate." But something stopped him from standing. Her eyes. They were locked on him with desperate focus, and one of her fingers was trembling. Just barely. Just enough to notice if you were paying attention. Vincent had spent years learning to notice the small things, the tiny indicators that machinery was struggling. He sat back down. "Are you having a medical emergency?" Vincent asked carefully. The trembling intensified. Her eyes flickered to the neural lattice on her head, then back to Vincent. "Your device," Vincent said. "It's supposed to help you move?" "Communicate?" A single tear formed at the corner of her eye, perfect and crystalline like everything else about her species. "But it's not working," Vincent concluded. He had no medical training. He had never worked with neural technology. But he had spent 15 years fixing systems that other people had given up on, and he knew the look of something that was broken, but pretending to function. "May I examine it?" Vincent asked. "I'm not a doctor. I'm just someone who fixes things." The Drexian blinked once, slowly, with obvious deliberation. Vincent took that as consent. He moved around to her side of the booth and studied the neural lattice. It was beautiful work, elegant in its complexity. Too elegant, maybe. Vincent had learned over the years that complexity was often the enemy of reliability. "Who installed this?" he muttered, more to himself than to her. "Because they made it gorgeous. But look at these connection points. The synaptic bridges are parallel when they should be offset. And this conductor here is routing signals through 3 unnecessary nodes. No wonder you're locked up. The feedback loop must be driving you insane." He pulled out his diagnostic scanner, a simple tool he used for checking electrical systems. It was not designed for neural technology, but electricity was electricity. The readings confirmed his suspicion. "Your lattice is fighting itself," Vincent explained. "Every command you try to send gets caught in a loop and sent back to you. It's like trying to talk while someone plays your own voice back at you at the same time. Constant interference." He looked at her eyes, saw the desperate hope there. "I can try to fix it," Vincent said, "but I need you to understand I'm not qualified for this. I fix pumps and climate systems. If I make things worse, I could hurt you." She blinked once, deliberately. Vincent took a deep breath and pulled out his micro-welder. "Okay, here we go." The work required absolute precision. He had to reroute the synaptic bridges one at a time, creating offset pathways that would prevent the feedback loops. His hands were steady despite his exhaustion, guided by years of practice working in tight spaces with unforgiving tolerances. 15 minutes passed in intense silence. Then 30. Vincent was aware that people were staring, that security guards had noticed something unusual happening, but he could not afford to care. One wrong move and he could fry her entire neural system. Finally, he made the last connection and stepped back. The Drexian's body convulsed once, sharply. Then her hand rose smoothly to touch her face. "Oh," came a voice, not from her mouth but projected from the neural lattice itself. "Oh, I can move. I can speak. I can—" "I am here again." Vincent nearly fell over from relief. "It worked. Thank everything. It actually worked." "What is your name?" the voice asked, and there was wonder in it. "Vincent Cruz. Maintenance worker, 3rd class. Currently probably in violation of about 6 different regulations." "I am Princess Zarathi of the Drexian sovereignty," she replied. Her body was moving now, fluid and graceful as she touched her own arms, her face, as if relearning that she existed. "And you have just performed unauthorized medical intervention on a member of the royal family." "That sounds bad," Vincent said weakly. 4 months, Zarathi said, her voice thick with emotion. "I have been trapped in paralysis for 4 months while the finest neural surgeons in 3-star systems assured my family they were doing everything possible, and a maintenance worker fixes me in half an hour." "Sometimes the complicated solution is wrong," Vincent offered. "Sometimes you just need to step back and look at the simple problem underneath all the complex systems." "Guards!" Zarathi called out, and suddenly Vincent was surrounded by armored Drexian soldiers. Their weapons were not raised, but they were very definitely ready. "Your Highness," one of them said, their voice box translator conveying obvious shock. "You are speaking." "Yes," Zarathi replied. "This human restored my neural lattice. Summon my mother immediately." "Your mother?" Vincent asked faintly. "Empress Valoria of the Drexian sovereignty," Zarathi said. "She will want to meet the person who gave me my life back." Vincent tried very hard not to panic. The Empress arrived with an entourage that filled the cafeteria. She was imposing in a way that made Vincent understand how the Drexians had built an empire spanning 30-star systems. Her crystalline features were sharp, her presence commanding. Then she saw her daughter standing upright, and her face transformed. "Zarathi?" Valoria whispered. "Mother," Zarathi replied, and walked forward on her own legs to embrace her. Vincent had never seen a Drexian cry before. He learned that their tears looked like falling diamonds. After a long moment, Valoria turned to Vincent. "Explain." "The neural lattice was creating feedback loops," Vincent said, trying to sound more confident than he felt. "I rerouted the synaptic bridges to create offset pathways. Basic signal flow correction. Anyone could have done it if they had looked at it as an engineering problem instead of a medical one." "Anyone did not do it," Valoria said sharply. "I employed specialists. I consulted with the greatest minds in neural technology. And a maintenance worker succeeds where they failed." "Sometimes you need someone who is used to fixing broken things under pressure," Vincent said. "Specialists think about ideal conditions. Maintenance workers think about what is actually broken right now and how to make it work again." Valoria studied him for a long moment. "What were you doing in the aristocratic dining section?" "Making a mistake," Vincent admitted. "I was exhausted and walked into the wrong room." "No," Zarathi interjected, her hand on her mother's arm. "He made exactly the right mistake. For 4 months I have been surrounded by experts who saw me as a fascinating medical challenge. He saw me as a person who needed help. That perspective made all the difference." The Empress knelt, which caused her entire entourage to gasp, and took her daughter's hands. "What should I give him? Name it, and it is his." Vincent thought about his tiny quarters in the maintenance levels, about the constant hunger and exhaustion, about the fact that he would probably be doing manual repairs until he was too old to work anymore. Then he looked at Zarathi, who was crying again, but with joy instead of frustration. "I want to make sure her lattice stays functional," Vincent said. And maybe I want to teach your medical technicians to think like mechanics sometimes. Complex problems often have simple solutions if you know where to look. Valoria stood, and her voice carried across the entire cafeteria. Vincent Cruz of Earth is hereby appointed Imperial Medical Consultant with full authority to examine and modify any neural technology in the sovereignty. His salary will reflect the value of someone who restored my daughter to herself. Anyone who questions this appointment answers to me. Mother, that is generous, Zarathi said, but perhaps excessive. Nonsense, Valoria replied. He gave me back my child. There is no salary high enough for that. Vincent was still processing this when Zarathi approached him. Her movements were growing more confident by the moment as she relearned her own body. Thank you, she said simply. You saw a person in distress and helped without calculating the cost or benefit. You just fixed what was broken because it needed fixing. That is what maintenance workers do, Vincent said, uncomfortable with the attention. We fix things. Machines, systems, whatever needs fixing. Not whatever, Zarathi corrected gently. You fix people too. You just do not think of it that way. I really do not have medical training, Vincent protested. You have something more valuable, Zarathi said. You have the instinct to help and the skills to make it happen. That combination is rarer than you think. Over the following weeks, Vincent discovered that being an Imperial Medical Consultant was significantly different from being a maintenance worker. For one thing, people actually listened when he talked. For another, he had resources he had never imagined. He started reviewing other cases of neural lattice failure across the sovereignty. In case after case, he found the same pattern: overcomplicated solutions creating their own problems. Specialists so focused on sophisticated interventions that they missed simple mechanical failures. He began training sessions for the medical technicians, teaching them to approach neural technology the way he approached a broken circulation system. Strip away the complexity. Find the actual malfunction. Fix that specific thing without adding unnecessary complications. The medical establishment was skeptical at first. Vincent was a maintenance worker, not a doctor. What could he possibly teach them? Then the success rate for neural restoration procedures increased by 40% in the first month. Then patients who had been written off as untreatable started walking again, talking again, living again. Then the medical establishment stopped being skeptical and started paying attention. Zarathi became his advocate and, unexpectedly, his friend. She attended his training sessions, using her own experience to illustrate the difference between being treated as a medical puzzle versus being treated as a person with a fixable problem. The specialists measured everything, she told one session of doctors. They ran every test imaginable. They consulted literature going back centuries. And they missed the obvious mechanical failure because they were too educated to see the simple answer. One of the senior physicians spoke up. Your Highness, with respect, we are trained to consider all variables, to ensure patient safety through comprehensive analysis. And I appreciate that training, Zarathi replied. But Vincent's approach taught me something important. Sometimes comprehensive analysis is procrastination. Sometimes the patient does not need you to understand every theoretical implication. They need you to fix what is broken right now. Vincent supplemented this. I'm not saying abandon your expertise. I'm saying use it differently. Your knowledge is valuable, but only if it leads to action. A perfectly analyzed problem that never gets fixed is worthless to the patient suffering from it. The training expanded. What started as neural technology sessions grew to include other medical applications. Vincent taught emergency responders to think like mechanics when dealing with trauma, to focus on immediate stabilization rather than perfect diagnosis. He taught surgeons to approach complex procedures as system repair rather than intricate art. Not everyone embraced the new methods. Some physicians argued that Vincent was oversimplifying medicine, reducing it to mere mechanics. Others insisted that his approach was dangerous, encouraging intervention without full understanding. Then came the crisis that silenced most of the critics. A transport vessel suffered catastrophic decompression in the outer colonies. 80 passengers were injured, many with severe neural trauma from rapid pressure changes. The local hospital was overwhelmed, their neural specialists unable to handle the volume of cases. Vincent was dispatched with a team of technicians he had trained. he walked into a nightmare. Patients everywhere, most of them locked in paralysis like Zarathi had been. The medical staff was trying to run comprehensive diagnostics on each case, creating a bottleneck that meant most patients were not getting treatment at all. "Stop!" Vincent ordered. "Everyone stop what you are doing." The head physician turned to him angrily. "We are trying to save lives." "You are trying to understand lives," Vincent corrected. "There is a difference. Right now we do not need understanding. We need triage and immediate intervention." He started moving through the patients, spending 30 seconds on each assessment, not running detailed scans, just looking at their neural lattices and identifying the primary malfunction. "This one has a severed synaptic bridge. Reroute around it. This one has a crushed conductor. Replace it. This one has feedback loops from pressure trauma. Offset the pathways." His trained technicians fanned out, following his lead. They were not trying to fully understand each case. They were just fixing the immediate problem that was causing paralysis. Within 3 hours, 60 patients were mobile again. Not fully recovered. Not completely healed. But alive and functional with the acute crisis resolved. The head physician approached Vincent, looking shaken. "I have never seen anything like that." "You were trying to solve permanent solutions," Vincent explained. "But these people did not need permanent solutions right now. They needed emergency intervention to prevent permanent damage. We can refine the treatment later. First, we stop them from dying." "You treated them like damaged machinery," the physician said, and it was not quite an accusation. "I treated them like people who needed immediate help," Vincent replied. "The comprehensive care comes after. You cannot analyze someone who has died while you are running tests." Word of the transport incident spread through the sovereignty. Vincent's methods were no longer theoretical or experimental. They had proven themselves in a crisis where traditional approaches had failed. The Empress summoned him to the imperial palace. "You have changed how we practice medicine," Valoria told him. "In 6 months you have accomplished what I could not achieve with decades of funding and research." "I just applied maintenance thinking to medical problems," Vincent said. "I did not invent anything new." "You invented a new perspective," Valoria corrected. "And perspective is everything. You taught us that sometimes the sophisticated answer is the wrong answer. That sometimes helping people requires simplicity rather than complexity." "Will it last?" Vincent asked. "Or will everyone go back to the old methods once I am not around?" "That depends," Zarathi said, entering the room. "Mother and I have been discussing a proposal." "What kind of proposal?" Vincent asked warily. "We want to establish an Imperial Institute of Practical Medicine," Valoria explained. "A school that teaches both traditional medical knowledge and your maintenance-based approach. Theory and practice balanced together. And we want you to lead it," Zarathi added. Vincent stared at them. "I am not qualified to run a medical school." "You are uniquely qualified," Valoria countered. "You understand both perspectives. You know the value of expertise, but you also know the danger of overthinking. Who better to teach that balance?" "I fix circulation pumps," Vincent protested weakly. "You fix everything," Zarathi said gently. "Systems, machines, people. You have a gift for seeing what is actually broken underneath all the complexity we use to hide from simple problems." Vincent thought about it. About all the patients he had helped. About the technicians he had trained who were now helping others. About the possibility of spreading this approach further. "If I do this," he said slowly, "I need to make something clear. I will not abandon the maintenance perspective. I will not let the Institute become another place where theory matters more than results." "That is exactly why we want you," Valoria said. "We need someone who will not be seduced by academic sophistication. Someone who remembers that the goal is helping people, not impressing colleagues." "Then I accept," Vincent said, "on one condition." "Name it," Valoria replied. "The Institute accepts students from all backgrounds," Vincent said. "Not just people with medical credentials. Engineers, technicians, anyone who can demonstrate they know how to fix things. Some of the best problem solvers I have met never went to a formal academy." "Agreed," Valoria said immediately. Unconventional thinking requires unconventional thinkers. The Imperial Institute of Practical Medicine opened 1 year later. Its curriculum was unlike any other medical school in the sovereignty. Students learned anatomy alongside mechanical systems. They studied disease processes and equipment failure modes. They practiced diagnosis in theoretical scenarios and in hands-on repair situations. Vincent taught the core course himself, bringing in broken equipment and injured patients side by side. "This is a malfunctioning ventilation unit," he would say, gesturing to a piece of machinery. "This is a patient with a damaged neural lattice. Your approach to both problems should be fundamentally similar. Identify the malfunction. Determine the simplest effective intervention. Fix it. Move on." The medical establishment remained divided. Some embraced the new approach, finding that it complemented their training perfectly. Others rejected it as reductive and dangerous. But the patients did not care about academic debates. They cared about results. And the results were undeniable. Recovery times improved across the board. Complications from overthought treatment decreased. Emergency response times shortened as medical personnel learned to triage effectively rather than perfectly. 5 years after Vincent fixed a neural lattice in a dining hall, the sovereignty's medical outcomes had improved more than they had in the previous 50 years. Zarathi visited him regularly at the institute, often bringing difficult cases that traditional doctors had given up on. "You have done more than fix my neural lattice," she told him during one visit. "You changed how an entire civilization thinks about helping people." "I just showed them what I already knew," Vincent said. "That sometimes the smart thing is to be simple." "That is harder than it sounds," Zarathi replied. "Simplicity requires wisdom. It requires understanding what actually matters and having the courage to ignore everything else." "You remind me of my better students," Vincent said with a smile. "I attend all of your lectures," Zarathi admitted. "They remind me that being educated and being effective are not always the same thing." "They can be," Vincent said. "That is what we are trying to teach, how to be both." "And you are succeeding," Zarathi assured him. "The results speak for themselves." The institute continued to grow. Other species sent observers, interested in incorporating the methodology into their own medical systems. Vincent found himself training instructors who would return to their homeworlds and establish similar programs. The approach was not universally adopted. Some civilizations rejected it as too radical. Others tried to implement it but lost the essential simplicity, overcomplicating the methodology until it became just another bureaucratic system. But where it took root properly, it flourished. Vincent never forgot his origins. Once a month he still spent a shift working in maintenance, repairing environmental systems alongside the workers who had once been his peers. "Why do you still do this?" one of them asked him. "You are important now. You do not need to do manual labor anymore." "This is where I learned to think," Vincent replied. "If I stop doing this work, I will start forgetting how to see problems clearly. I will start overcomplicating things like everyone else." He meant it. The hands-on work kept him grounded, reminded him that at its core, fixing things was fixing things. Whether it was a pump or a neural lattice, the fundamental approach remained the same. Identify the problem. Find the simplest solution that works. Implement it. Verify it. Move on. Everything else was just decoration. Empress Valoria attended the Institute's 5th anniversary celebration. "When my daughter was paralyzed," she told the assembled students and faculty, "I threw every resource imaginable at the problem. Money, expertise, technology. And nothing worked because everyone was trying to find a sophisticated solution to what turned out to be a simple problem." She looked at Vincent. "This human showed us that intelligence is not about complexity. It is about seeing clearly. And sometimes the clearest sight comes from the simplest perspective." "Do not misunderstand," Vincent said when it was his turn to speak. "Expertise matters. Training matters. Knowledge matters. But they only matter if they lead to effective action. The goal is not to understand problems perfectly. The goal is to solve them well enough that people's lives improve." "Well enough," one of the students repeated. "Not perfectly?" "Perfect is the enemy of good," Vincent replied. "Perfect takes too long, costs too much, and often never arrives." Good happens now and helps people immediately. You can always refine good into better. But you cannot refine perfect because you are too busy pursuing it to actually help anyone. After the ceremony, Zarathi walked with Vincent through the Institute gardens. I never thanked you properly, Zarathi said. You thank me constantly, Vincent replied. In fact, you probably thank me too much. Not for fixing my neural lattice, Zarathi clarified. For seeing me as a person first. Every doctor, every specialist, they saw a fascinating case. A royal patient. A career-making challenge. You just saw someone who needed help. That is how I see everyone, Vincent said simply. I know, Zarathi replied. That is what makes you remarkable. You never lost that perspective, even after everything changed. Vincent stopped walking and looked at her seriously. Can I tell you something? Of course. Sometimes I am terrified that I got lucky, Vincent admitted. That fixing your lattice was an accident, and someday everyone will realize I am just a technician pretending to understand medicine. You are not pretending, Zarathi said firmly. You are applying a different kind of understanding, and luck had nothing to do with it. You succeeded because you approached the problem without preconceptions. You saw what was actually wrong instead of what you expected to be wrong. I still doubt myself, Vincent said. Good, Zarathi replied. The moment you stop doubting is the moment you become arrogant, and arrogance kills patience. That almost sounds like something I would say in class. Because you taught me well, Zarathi said. You taught all of us well. As the years passed, the Institute became a fixture of the sovereignty's medical landscape. Its graduates were sought after across multiple star systems, known for their practical approach and effective results. Vincent eventually stepped back from day-to-day leadership, though he continued teaching core courses and consulting on difficult cases. He trained successors who understood the philosophy and could carry it forward. But he never stopped working maintenance shifts. Never stopped doing hands-on repairs in environmental systems. Because that was where the clarity came from. That was where he remembered what actually mattered. Fixing things. Helping people. Seeing clearly through complexity to the simple truth underneath. One evening, decades after that first encounter in the dining hall, Vincent sat with Zarathi watching the stars through the Institute's observation dome. Do you remember what you said when I first spoke to you? Zarathi asked. I said a lot of things, Vincent replied. Most of them probably stupid because I was terrified. You said that sometimes the simplest solution is the right one, Zarathi reminded him. And that principle changed everything. It was obvious, Vincent said. I was just stating the obvious. The obvious is only obvious after someone points it out, Zarathi said. Before that it is invisible, hidden by everyone's assumptions and expectations. Vincent thought about that. About all the assumptions he had challenged. About all the expectations he had ignored in favor of just trying to help. I never meant to change anything, he said quietly. I just wanted to help someone who was suffering. And that is precisely why it worked, Zarathi replied. You were not promoting a theory or building a reputation. You were solving problems. That genuineness cut through all the academic posturing and political maneuvering. They sat together in comfortable silence, watching the stars and thinking about how a tired worker's mistake had led to profound change across an empire. Sometimes exhaustion leads you to exactly where you need to be. Sometimes the simplest answer solves the biggest problem. And sometimes the most important thing you can do is see a person who needs help and just help them, without calculating the cost or contemplating the consequences. Just fix what is broken. Everything else will follow.